Happy Friday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for April 5th, 2024. The 14th Friday of the year, the first of 4 Fridays this month. And April 5th is an important day, Gold Star Spouses Day, a day to show respect and acknowledge those who have lost their significant other during his or her military service. Yes, it was initially called Gold Star Wives Day, but that changed to be more inclusive when the day was officially recognized by the U.S. Senate in 2010. The Gold Star pin tradition upon the death of a service member has existed since 1973, although the term Gold Star dates all the way back to World War I, and during the wars, people would hang a blue star in their window if a family member had gone off to war. You know, way before the internet, cell phones, or any such thing like that. And then, if a member of their family was killed during the war, the blue star would turn into a gold star. Meanwhile, U.S. troops overseas are in focus today as Iran says it will respond to the deaths of several Iranian Revolutionary Guardsmen that were killed earlier this week in Syria by an Israeli airstrike. Another Israeli airstrike that killed several aid workers in Gaza, including an American, has ramped up calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, including a call from the President Biden, to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But first, former UN Ambassador and National Security Advisor John Bolton on Newsmax.
And of course, there are now these worries, these fears that a retaliatory strike by Iran could be imminent. Should they be afraid? Is this something that kind of precipitates a possible strike?
Well, exactly. After the Israelis took out several key leaders of the Iranian Quds force in Damascus a couple days ago, there have been signs of preparations, defensive preparations across Israel for attack, possibly from Hezbollah in Lebanon, possibly directly from Iran itself. Iran's got a real decision to make here. If they do retaliate, that could be the signal for more Israeli operations against Hezbollah or against Iran directly. Iran is responsible for the situation in the region now, and so this will be a test to see whether they have a larger set of objectives in mind beyond the Hamas attack out of the Gaza Strip. So this is a very critical moment, and I'm sure Netanyahu will be telling Biden what he knows, what he suspects about Iran's response during that phone call.
What do you think about Biden's eroding support from the Muslim community? We saw what happened in Michigan. Do you think that plays a part in Biden trying to, maybe possibly have a ceasefire? That seems to be what he's pushing for, a two-state solution. What do you think, sir? Does the campaign have anything to do with Biden's seemingly soft stance on what's going on there?
I think it's very directly related to his decreasing support for Israel. He's trying to walk a very fine line in Democratic political circles. We've had broad bipartisan support for Israel in this country for many years, but the left wing of the Democratic Party has moved in a clearly anti-Israel direction, and in a very close election this November, dependent on a very few swing states, that could be real trouble for Biden, and he knows it. That's, I think, where his frustration comes from. He wishes this thing would end, that there would be a ceasefire so he could take it off the table. I don't think that's where the Israeli government or the Israeli people are. They are committed to eliminating Hamas militarily and politically. It's not a matter of just Bibi Netanyahu. This is the Israeli population, I think, overwhelmingly behind that view, and to go into Rafah and finish Hamas off. And I'm sure that's going to be a big part of the conversation, too.
That's former UN Ambassador John Bolton. And for more on that phone call, we go to Rob Schmitt.
Today, Joe Biden had a very important phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu. It came just days after Israeli forces mistakenly killed a number of aid workers inside Gaza. Israel continues the very difficult work of removing the cancer of Hamas while trying to minimize the harm to civilians, which Hamas uses as human shields. Today, Joe Biden at the helm of an administration that wiped out an entire family of innocent Afghans while hunting terrorists during the Afghanistan pullout. Well, they scolded Netanyahu for the mistakes of the IDF and called for an immediate ceasefire. And John Kirby described that call.
On that phone call, the president emphasized that the strikes on humanitarian workers and the overall humanitarian situation in Gaza are unacceptable. He made clear that U.S. policy with respect to Gaza will be determined by our assessment of Israel's immediate action on these steps. He underscored that an immediate ceasefire is essential to stabilize and improve the humanitarian situation and to protect innocent civilians.
And really help out Hamas. The United States is rapidly moving away from the leader of the only democracy in the Middle East, while his country is in the middle of a war to destroy a terror group that exists solely to bring destruction and death to their people. 6 months ago, this was all understood. But over time, supporting Israel has grown less fashionable. People forget about babies being put in ovens, mothers with their breasts chopped off, young girls slaughtered and raped at a concert. The U.S. abandonment of Netanyahu goes much further than today's words. A write-up this week from Jewish News Syndicate reveals a detailed plan from the Biden administration to oust Benjamin Netanyahu from power. That's right. The details were revealed in a text thread involving radical left Israeli protester Ami Dror. Dror telling his colleagues the White House was asking the radical left inside Israel to begin rioting again, which we have seen flare up here in recent days. The White House asking for this. Dror also explained a 4-part plan the White House was using to overthrow the democratically elected Israeli government and Netanyahu, including actions on the ground in Gaza, humanitarian aid drops designed to give the appearance that Israel is committing war crimes and the U.S. is saving the people of Gaza by dropping food and building them a port.
Rob Schmitt, host of Rob Schmitt Tonight. And if you've been paying attention, the Biden administration has been supporting Israel because it has to, right? But at the same time, the president is trying to appease the appeasers. Back to Rob Schmitt.
The election may be 7 months out, but Joe Biden's political analysts already have a clear picture of November and what it'll take for our ailing and destructive president to somehow eke out a re-election. And Biden's chances go way down if he loses Michigan. And you can't win Michigan without Dearborn in this election, a community on Detroit's west side. Here is a picture of the biggest mosque in Dearborn, the largest in North America, it is. Dearborn is so Arab, it enabled Rashida Tlaib to actually become a U.S. congresswoman. Appeasing the people who pray at this mosque has become priority one for Joe Biden's foreign policy team of late, as amazing as that is to say.
Overnight in Geneva, the UN's top human rights body passed a non-binding resolution that calls for countries around the world to stop selling or shipping weapons to Israel. The United States, Germany, and some others opposed the resolution. Several countries abstained from a vote. Although the vote was passed, it's non-binding, so it doesn't really mean that much. It's really more significant than anything else, but it is showing growing concerns around the world or through the UN for Israel's actions. This is White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby on Good Morning America addressing questions on President Biden's phone call.
We've got to see some changes. We've got to see the humanitarian situation improve in Gaza, or otherwise we will have to try to take a look at our own policy and make decisions and change the way that we're supporting Israel.
You are going to hear a lot about the Biden-Netanyahu phone call and what was allegedly said or not said throughout the day and on the big shows tonight. President Biden today is getting a tour of the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore and reaffirming his commitment, the administration's commitment, to rebuilding the bridge and helping the city. And since you can practically walk to Delaware from Baltimore, the president will then be heading home for the weekend. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump also continues to dominate the headlines for multiple obvious reasons, including his legal cases. Late yesterday, Judge Aileen Cannon rejected Trump's bid to have his charges in the classified documents case dropped under the Presidential Records Act, or what is commonly being referred to in a lot of these stories as PRA, Presidential Records Act. Cannon said it was partially due to some of the wording by Trump's attorneys. She also fired back at Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who had criticized her handling of the case, and she has also told both sides to prepare potential jury instructions. One of the things that Jack Smith wasn't happy about. For more, we go to The Balance with Eric Bolling and special guest Megyn Kelly.
So a lot of people watch these and they get confused, and he's being prosecuted and persecuted in Georgia and New York on two separate federal cases. We get the sense, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to ask you your legal brilliance, your mind. Doesn't fair play and common sense come into play in any of these? Because I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, that there have been instances of the same things that they're prosecuting Trump for. In many different instances, people aren't being prosecuted. So precedents, any of that, precedents?
Yeah. I mean, including the sitting president of the United States, who had classified documents in his possession. And there was a witness, the author of his book, the ghostwriter, to whom he showed classified material. He spoke it out loud, at least. He orally read it to the guy. And no charges. No, it's fine. If you're Joe Biden, it's fine because you're, quote, a well-meaning elderly man. But if you're Donald Trump, it's a different story. When even he's not accused of actually showing that classified document around at that meeting about Mark Meadows' book. He's only accused of saying, I've got it here, but I can't show it to you. The other guy actually read aloud from it all the contents to a person without security clearances. And it's well-meaning he's not going to get charged. So yes, there's definitely a double standard.
Megyn, what this other idea? And I know the appellate court reduced the bond that Trump was required from $454 million to $175, but still, it begs the question. So if you're an average person who goes against the seated prosecutor, Letitia James in New York, in this case, and she doesn't like you, doesn't like your politics, can't they just bankrupt you if they want to by making these ridiculous bonds, even just to appeal something you don't agree with?
100%. That the penalty was built in to ruin Trump, whether he wins this appeal or not. It thus deprives him of his right to appeal. If you lose everything in order to file the appeal, what right to appeal do you have? This is one of the arguments he raised. And thankfully, the Court of Appeals, not the New York State Court of Appeals, that's the highest court, but the middle appellate court, agreed with him. Now, great. I mean, $175 million is still a lot of dough. But look, he found somebody to support it and he posted it. So thank God, because he shouldn't lose that case before he's already filed the appeal. But look, let me just zoom out and say the double standard is apparent in virtually every single one of these cases, both in who they charge and who they don't.
That's Megyn Kelly, who again is an attorney, on with Eric Bolling. Now on to the gag order in the New York hush money case.
What happened today, or just this week, in the New York State Stormy Daniels hush money case? You saw the judge there, Merchant, he gagged Trump. He said, you can't talk about my kid, my adult daughter, who's a Democratic activist. Okay, then that led to a federal district judge named Reggie Walton. You may or may not know this guy. He was the judge on who handled the Scooter Liberty trial back in 2005. He went on CNN. Eric, this doesn't happen.
It's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family.
Where was Judge Walton when Chuck Schumer stood outside of the U.S. Supreme Court and threatened the justices inside that they would reap the whirlwind, that they would have to pay for decisions that he didn't like? Did he say anything? Where was he when the protesters were outside of Justice Kavanaugh, when Justice Kavanaugh was almost assassinated, and all the other justices in the wake of the Dobbs decision having been leaked? Did he feel the need to say anything in their defense? Not a word. And I went back to look. Did Trump actually threaten this judge or his daughter? I looked at every single post he made. Not once. He criticized the judge and the daughter for being partisans, for being on a Trump witch hunt. That's all fair game. There's nothing even close to a threat. And so you know what's happening to this judge as a result? Judge Reggie Walton, Mike Davis, of the Article 3 projects has just filed a complaint about him because he's violated his ethical standards. So it's one standard for Trump and something else for everyone else.
That is Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show podcast on The Balance with Eric Bolling. So, as she said, everywhere you turn, they say Trump threatened, Trump is threatening, the threat, there was no threat. Never a threat, a lot of criticism, but no threat. Megyn mentioned the Article 3 project, right? Their website says that they fearlessly protect the rule of law and know how to effectively fight Washington. Well, there is a group called the 65 Project, or simply 65 Project, which is labeled a bipartisan effort to protect democracy. But as discussed on the Right Squad last night, every member of this so-called bipartisan group is a left-winger, including Judge Merchan's wife. Not his daughter, but his wife, who it turns out once worked for New York Attorney General Letitia James. Judge Merchan's wife. If this were TV, I'd be doing that head-exploding gesture. Okay. So do you remember the other big story? Today is Friday. That's the hint. Friday. The jobs report showed 303,000 jobs added in the month of March. Remember, a couple of times this week, I said, don't forget the number 216. So the number blew away expectations, which is good news for the economy, but could also mean that the Federal Reserve won't lower interest rates for a while, which is bad news for all of us, okay? 216,000, the expected number, 303. On Wall Street, stocks are trying to bounce back a bit after yesterday's massive sell-off. Again, the jobs report a good news, bad news kind of scenario. If you missed it yesterday, the Dow lost more than 500 points. Probably not a good day for your 401k. And it's not a good day for however many thousands of people work at the 99 cents only stores. They announced that they will shut down all 371 of its locations located in 4 different states: California, Nevada, Arizona, and Texas. And I'm not going to get off the rail too much and get into this whole thing, but how about this California fast food restaurant minimum wage thing? Several places already closing down, and it turns out that Governor Gavin Newsom's place is the only place that's not adhering to the $20 minimum wage. Getting back to the 99 cents only stores, the company's interim CEO said the last several years have presented significant and lasting challenges in the retail environment, including the unprecedented impact of the pandemic, rising levels of shrinkage, nobody likes shrinkage, persistent inflationary pressures, and other macroeconomic headwinds. All right, keep up with all of the news all day and all weekend long on Newsmax. It is available on most major cable systems, and make sure you're streaming on the new Newsmax Plus app. Simply go to newsmaxplus.com, get signed up. You can also get a free trial there. And there's a lot of great shows coming up for you on the weekend lineup, as well as specials and documentaries. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you so much for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Please continue to share it with your friends and family. Today is also National Deep Dish Pizza Day, commonly known as Chicago style. You may want to indulge in some of that over the weekend as well. Enjoy the weekend doing whatever it is you do, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Megyn Kelly over at Newsmax. The Newsmax people have been really, really terrific. Newsmax has been terrific.
President Trump is right. Millions are tired of Fox, and they're switching to Newsmax Plus. It's the fastest growing streaming service in America. You don't need woke Disney and Hulu anymore. Just get Newsmax Plus. Watch the best shows like Greg Kelly, Rob Schmitt, Greta Van Susteren, and Eric Bolling. And get incredible analysis from Dick Morris, Alan Dershowitz, Carrie Lake, Mike Huckabee, and more. It's free to start. So go to NewsmaxPlus.com now to sign up and watch Newsmax anytime, anywhere.